Hi, Boyd Barrett again. And like I said the last time, I've been doing audiobook narration for maybe 2 to 3 years, and I absolutely love doing it. But one of the perks is being able to meet and work with some fantastic authors. And so what I've decided to do is to interview some of those authors and introduce you to them and to their work and maybe into a little bit of the process that I do when I'm working with those authors. So today I'm talking with Shannon Work. Hey, Shannon.
Hi, Boyd. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Shannon is the author of the Mountain Resort Mystery Series, and she just published her fifth novel in that series. But before we dive into those, what I want us to do is find out a little bit about your journey, Shannon. So, um, now you had a career in real estate, right?
I did. I did. I was a real estate developer for 20 years.
Wow. And so, what what made you want to? Have you always wanted to be an author?
I have always written. As a child, I wrote, and I've always as an adult, wanted to write novels and started and stopped two times over the years while I was still working and had small kids at home and never could get any traction. And I was trying to do historical fiction. I was getting lost in the research because I love history.
Mhm.
And so gave up both projects probably 10 years apart. And then finally, when our youngest was the last one left at home, and I was looking at being an empty nester, I thought, okay, well, now what I'm going to do, I retired from real estate and thought this is perfect. We spent half our year in Colorado, half our year in Texas, and
Mhm.
thought, great time to actually get a book finished. So I sat down and worked on it. Took a little while, learning how to finally get one done and finished.
Yeah.
And decided to do a mystery novel because it's what I like to read after historical fiction. Because
Mhm.
and I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of research involved, so I wouldn't get caught up in that and
Right,
get it
right.
done. So that's
Wow.
I got
So,
started.
so tell a little bit about, I mean, it's so interesting with these books because they're set, at least the first four are set in the some of the mountain resort
Right,
communities in Colorado, such
right,
as Aspen and Vail and Telluride.
right.
Um, so what made you go that direction?
Well, when I decided on a mystery series, actually, at first I wasn't even planning on a series. I wanted to write a mystery novel, just get one book done.
Mhm.
And I looked, one of my favorite authors was Mary Higgins Clark. And she has almost all of her books are set somewhere around New Jersey, where she's from, New York, and places she's familiar with. And I thought, well, what would be an interesting place to set a mystery novel? And it wasn't a hard decision to decide that the Rocky Mountains would be a great place to set a mystery novel. So with the first book, like I said, I was just learning and studying and decided, well, I'll set it in Aspen because Telluride is our second home.
Right.
And if I was going to mess up on a book, I didn't want to mess up on it in Telluride. I thought, well, I'll just give Aspen a try. If I mess on it, that's okay.
Uh-huh.
So I set the first book there and had a ton of fun and had people asking me, well, where are you going to set the next one? And I'd already decided to set the second one in Vale and
Hmm.
did some Denver scenes in it too. And then finally, with the third book came brought, I thought, well, I think I know enough now. I feel comfortable with setting a story here in Telluride.
Right, right.
So
So,
the third and
uh,
fourth are set in Telluride, but the fifth, as you know,
yes,
even ends in Telluride, but takes a detour to Texas for most of
that's right. Del Rio.
my hometown. Yes,
Yeah, and it was so much fun. So now each one of them could be read by themselves.
right,
It's possible. But
sure.
you have the main detective who, is in each one of them. So ideally it would be great for you, reader or listener, to start at the first and go. But if you wanted to pick up any of them,
One in the
I
middle.
think you'd be fine.
Absolutely. There's an interesting story. When I was writing that first one, again, I wasn't thinking about a series, but everything I started to read about authors and new authors and was that it was beneficial to have a character, or a set of characters that you brought through different stories. So I thought,
Right.
well, that's when I decided I went back and I beefed up the detective in that first novel, knowing, okay, well, I'm going to pull him through and set him in a second and possibly a third story. Now here I am with
Oh,
five. So
okay. So at first, Jack really wasn't as big of a character
not
as
at
he
all.
became. Oh, okay.
Right. And you probably remember the first book. He was not the main character. He was
Right.
definitely an
Right.
important secondary character, but he wasn't the main character. And it was only after I figured out that, well, I'm going to make this a series, that I went back and added a scene that was important, kind of introducing him a little bit better, giving you a little bit more of his background. And
Mm-hmm.
that was an afterthought. That was afterwards. So it's been interesting. So each book after that has been a lot more of the main detective character.
Right.
A lot
Right.
of fun with that.
And they are murder mysteries.
They are.
So, or at least, so now who when you write, who do you think your audience is?
I figured, since I studied Mary Higgins Clark very heavily before I started this, and when I was writing my first book, I used her
Mm-hmm.
as a guide. How much dialogue, how much narration, how do you plot to keep suspense? Um, uh, I think that I was using her as a guide in figuring out how to write these. And so the audience, I thought, would be similar to her audience, and
Mm-hmm.
try to find out, pretty much it's traditional mystery readers
Right.
who like my books. I always tell people they're very PG-13.
Yes.
They're safe for
Mm-hmm.
teenagers, and there's no gratuitous violence or
Right.
sex, anything like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And very minimal that would be anything that would be offensive
and
at
most
all.
of the
Yeah.
violence is kind of
Yeah.
off stage.
Yes. That's right. That's right.
I think
So
the world today is a little bit kind of there's some, problems enough that I don't think entertainment needs to be dark and
absolutely.
so
That's
we try
right. That's
murder a
right.
little light in my books.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I appreciate that because I would rather, I would rather narrate something like that and feel good about it. So now for those authors and narrators out there who have questions about maybe how something like this, a working relationship like we have, can come about, let's talk a little bit about uh, how how this worked. I remember it was actually August of 2022 when I sent you. Well, what happened was I saw an ad for because you had already written, and
I think I had
three
three
of the
books
books were
out.
out.
I
Three
think
of them were already out, and you were on four.
right,
And then four came out at the end of 2022, correct?
right.
Yeah. So, but I contacted you in August, and I don't remember if it was an email or through your website or something. And I sent you excerpts from your first book. I just narrated a couple of excerpts and said, would you be interested? And
Right.
it was amazing because I heard from you the next day.
Well, I have to tell you, I had since the first book, I have had readers or potential listeners contact me wanting to know if the
Hmm.
audiobook was coming out, because a lot of people prefer audiobook, or some people only listen to audiobooks. And
Right.
so I knew there was demand there, because I kept hearing from people who wanted the audiobook, but it was something I knew nothing about. It was going to be a whole other learning curve for me after having gone through the learning curve of just getting a book written and out and published.
Right.
And so I kept putting it off. But when I got your email and I listened to, I think you did two chapters. You did the first chapter, which is kind of an interior monologue.
Hmm.
And then you did a chapter that had some dialogue between characters in it. And I fell in love with those, with that. I just thought he has the voice for my characters, and was really excited. So contacted you immediately. And it was a lot of help that you knew what you were doing, because I had no idea what I was doing
Yeah.
with audio.
Yeah.
So So you were a lot
Right.
of
And and I had done a few before that. Now, since that time, I've done yours as well as,
right,
I've done all five of yours now, and
right.
then quite a few others. So I've learned a lot since then, but I knew enough to kind of get us to the point where
Just going.
we could work together. So, um, now when we do this, one thing that I think probably hit you as you were thinking about Jack. If I remember right, you said you thought my voice would
Was
work well for Jack.
right.
And of course that's important because he is that main character. And and part of that is I also grew up in Texas. Now Jack is from Louisiana, but spent a lot of time in Texas, and that probably was, kind of where a
Right.
lot of his sound comes from. So I try not to overdo the Texas for Jack, but he's there. Jack's there. But then
Definitely
in
not
some of the in
there.
this latest one, well, there's a lot of Texas accent.
And
And
I
so
love
I felt right at home.
I
Right.
have to say, after having written it and rewritten it, edited it, re-edited uh, it was still a pleasure to go back through and hear you
Yeah.
narrate the story. It was a whole other experience for me. It was a lot of fun because you just nailed a couple of those accents for me. I think
Yeah.
before I had told you that one of the characters in my mind, I had Sam Elliott
Right.
in
Right.
one of the Westerns. I was like, that's kind of what I'm envisioning. And then I heard you when I got to that point in the book,
Hmm.
and absolutely loved it. It was a complete
Yeah.
joy.
Right, because I can do a facsimile of pretty decent facsimile of
Right,
Sam Elliott, and yeah, and what I try to do, and I said this in the first interview with John, that I like to have characters or actors or people that I know in my head because that helps me to keep that that character voice and that character personality. So that was very helpful for for that particular character. Um, and then yeah, I even told you one character ended up being a little more uh, well, it's almost a Barney Fife, but not really Barney Fife. A, um,
right.
a more educated Barney Fife. But it's still that attitude. So when I did that character, I just had to put that attitude of somebody who just kind of was putting on, and he knew what he was doing. So
Oh, it was great. I thoroughly
yeah.
enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah. So it's fun, and again, for narrators and authors who do work together, I think it's important to collaborate when you can. And if that author has a voice in their head, that helps. It
Right.
really, really helps.
Right. And I never have when I'm writing characters, I never have real people in mind, but every once in a while there will be that voice a little bit. And the character wasn't Sam Elliott, but I heard him
Hmm.
and you just like I said, you nailed it. And so
Yeah.
it was a great listen for sure.
Wow. So as an author, um, what would your advice be to other narrators out there who would like to establish a relationship like we've been able to do? What, as an author, what attracts you to that? I mean, was it the way that I did it as far as contacting you with excerpts instead of just saying, "Hey, do you want an audiobook?"
Yeah, for me, absolutely. Having that excerpt in it, and so that I could hear it and actually hear my story coming to life. I think
Mhm.
that was a huge plus, and definitely spurred me on to think, okay, well, now it's time to let's hit that learning curve, and we figured out how to write books. Now let's figure out how to produce them into audiobooks.
Right.
It's been a
Right.
lot of fun, but you've been a tremendous help, and I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
well, it's been a joy to do every one of them, and it's been I think a real help for me in my progression as a narrator, because I'd already done several, but to have this consistent story that I'm telling, there's something to that, and I I really appreciate the opportunity. Um, so if those of you who like murder mysteries or just like good stories, I can't I can't recommend these enough. And like I said last time, even if you don't like audiobooks, get the books. D- do what you need to do to get these stories because Shannon really is doing a wonderful job. So Shannon, you've got this series. Are you going to continue with this series or do a different one, or what are you
I
thinking?
think for now, I'm going to continue this one. I have readers every time the book comes out now that they'll finish it in a couple days and they're
Yeah,
already asking, when's the next one? And I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
not
Where's Jack going now?
it takes me a little while. I am sketching ideas right now for book 6, but I'll
Hmm.
probably give myself about another month before I actually sit down and start outlining it and getting serious.
Yeah.
Taking a little
So
break.
that's what. So do you like to have the entire story? Because writers do things differently.
I
Do you
do.
have do you like to have the entire story outlined
I
first?
have I have skeleton of the story completely outlined start to finish. I know who did it, who, what, when,
Hmm.
why, and how. And
Hmm.
but then when it's very kind of a crude outline. So when it actually comes time to sit down and start
Hmm.
writing scenes, that's when I
Yeah.
really have to turn the creative juices on and flesh out characters and story.
Right.
And some
Right.
interesting twists and turns always pop up. So that's a fun part too.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to the next one, and I'm sure all of your readers and listeners are. And I've been so happy to be part of your journey as an author, and hopefully my being involved and being able to do narration for you will increase your market, increase your
And
listenership
it
and
absolutely
readership.
has. It
Mhm.
definitely has. There were a lot of happy listeners when we first put out the first book, and
Yeah.
then pretty quickly did second, third, fourth, and now fifth. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate your help, Boyd. It's been a great experience. I'm a work in progress, and I'm trying to still figure this out. I'm just glad people so far seem to like them. So it's
Well,
me
you're
happy.
you're doing great. And
Well,
like I say, every time the first one was wonderful, but it seems like you get better as you go,
well, I
which is
sure do
the way it ought
appreciate
to be.
I sure
Yeah.
do appreciate it. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay. Good
All right,
deal. Good to
Boyd,
see
thank
you.
you. Have a good
Anytime you're through
evening.
Roswell, let me know.
I will. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.